Welcome to the Self-Trust Solution, the podcast for entrepreneurs, leaders, and high achievers who are done second-guessing and ready to execute with clarity. I'm your host, Dawn Leday, the Self-Trust Coach, and each week I'll help you build the one strategy that makes all others work, self-trust. This is where bold goals meet grounded action. Let's dive in. You don't have to be healed, hustling, or high-performing to be valuable. And your purpose, it's allowed to evolve as you do. Welcome back to the Self-Trust Solution podcast. Today's guest is Abigail Gagnon, a ministry founder, podcast host, and powerful reminder that your worth isn't tied to your productivity. Abigail's story is both deeply personal and refreshingly honest. After her health declined in her 20s, everything she thought defined her, her work, her service, her sense of purpose, was stripped away. But in the quiet that followed, she discovered something deeper, that purpose isn't a performance, and that sometimes the most meaningful legacy starts with the way we treat ourselves. If you've ever felt like your current path no longer fits, or you've questioned whether you're still making a difference, this episode is here to say you are. Welcome, Abigail. We're excited to have you on the podcast today.
I'm happy to be here.
Awesome. Well, I know that our listeners are going to be very interested in what you have to share because people are often thinking about their purpose, and sometimes their idea of their purpose, they're holding on to it pretty tightly, even if circumstances have changed. And you believe our purpose can shift throughout life. Can you share what you're doing now and how that shift revealed itself to you?
Absolutely. So I used to work in camp ministry and I worked in the kitchen. I also worked at various restaurants and I loved doing that. And I truly felt called kind of to that even before I started doing it. And then I volunteered at a camp and worked in the kitchen, and that kind of solidified that for me. And then I started working in a different camp where I was able to get paid and whatever. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it, even despite the physical pain that I was in at the time with my back and knees and all kinds of different other things. I was still able to work, 6-7 days a week and worked long hours and absolutely loved it. And then when my health started to decline in other areas where I could no longer do that, it was really, really hard for me at first because I didn't want to leave. One, that place kind of saved me in many, many ways. The people there were family. I was very kind of scared to leave and scared to move away from that, and didn't really know at the time like who I was kind of outside of that. And I think that now looking back, even as much as I would go back and relive those days in a heartbeat, even the bad ones, I think that I would also try and make sure that I prioritize knowing who I was outside of that, because not only when I had my health start to decline and doctors didn't know what was wrong with me, I kept going to different doctors. It was a really hard time for me. I feel like it was made harder because I felt like I lost my purpose. I felt like, what was the point of, living in a sense? I wasn't fully suicidal. I have been in the past. Like, it wasn't like I was like thinking of ways to like end my life, but I definitely was in a really dark place and wondering like if I can never go back to working how I was working, and doing the things that I used to be able to do. And I put a lot of emphasis, I feel like, on myself of what I was doing for others was what gave me purpose and what solidified like who I was as a person. And I think that, yes, it's great today, but in different areas. But I also think that we need to realize that there's more to us. Like, if someone were to ask like who you are, be able to say things that aren't just benefiting other people, because otherwise, like, when you do have that shift, you're going to have a really hard time with managing that and not being able to think that like your purpose is ended because you can't do the things for other people that you used to be able to do.
Yeah, for sure. When we tie our purpose to our accomplishments, what we do either for achievement or for others, and I see that a lot with high achievers and entrepreneurs that I work with, when something doesn't go great, then it
Mhm.
is a hit to your identity, your purpose, instead of realizing that those are separate things. I love how this ties into that. So what did change? It seemed like there are some chronic conditions that seem to have shaped or challenged your sense of purpose. So how have you managed that?
So I, at the time when I was in a really dark place, wasn't able to work, was on disability. Never thought at, 20 something years old that I would be on disability. I decided I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore as far as just staying stuck. Like I can't control whether the doctors can figure out what's wrong with me right away, but I can control how I handle it. And so I got into therapy for a couple months and I had been in therapy before and graduated out of therapy, not that I didn't continue to work on myself, but I didn't feel like I needed, weekly, monthly therapy to continue to do that because I had the tools in my toolbox to be able to do what I needed to do. And so I talked to a therapist and she really encouraged me, like, even though I was at home, to have a morning routine and have somewhat of a routine. And even if my health didn't allow me to do all the things I wanted to do, to at least get out of bed to start my day and, eat, shower, whatever, and do something to start my day. Even if I ended up back in bed because of my health, like I at least had some purpose. And then I had a women's group on Facebook that I had started years before and hadn't really gone anywhere. I invited some women to that. They invited women. That expanded. We now have many, many messenger support groups. We do, monthly or every other month hangout calls on Google Meet. So we meet with people all over the world. Some people have their camera off and their mic off and they just, hang out with us. People do whatever they feel comfortable doing, want to do. They go about their day. We also do book studies and Bible studies and a bunch of different things like that. And that kind of gave me a purpose and gave me a new way to be able to help people. And like I said, I do believe truly that like we need to be able to find our purpose outside of just helping people. It really did help to be able to shift my focus outside of myself, in that time.
Mm, yes. So, what would you say to people who believe that purpose has to look big and visible or maybe even hustle driven?
I, for one, have really struggled with that for a long time, and I have a very hard time resting. Even on my days where I'm, really not feeling well, my husband has, hidden the laundry detergent from me, told me, do not do the dishes. If I come home and the dishes are done, I'm not gonna be happy with you. And obviously, like, I know he means it in a caring way. He's not gonna be like super bad about it, but still. So I definitely struggle with that. And one of the things that I have repeated to myself over and over again over the last several years is that doing more does not add to my value. So doing less can't subtract from it. And even if I have to tell myself that 100 times a day, it's really, really helped me. And I'm now, this year, I've kind of not mastered, but I've gotten a lot better at the resting part and not feeling guilty about it physically. But I still feel a lot of pressure to work on myself inwardly and to feel like I have to be growing and becoming better. And I'm not saying that's fully bad in and of itself, but this year, a big focus of mine is to realize that I am known and I am loved just as I am. And I do not need to change who I am to be worth something. And so I think that that is something that I would say to people, and that your legacy can be just how you interact with people. And that that can ripple effect into so much more than you could ever dream or imagine. I think sometimes, like we've said, like the hustle culture, feeling like our legacy has to be like either a business or how we raise our kids or whatever it is. And for those of us that have chronic illnesses, may not have kids, whatever it is that you feel like you can't do what you feel like would give your legacy meaning, that just knowing that you existing and how you interact with people, if you are shining light and treating people in, how you would want to be treated, then you can leave a legacy, even if you're not doing this big, giant, grand thing, because there's so much more to life than just all of that.
It's so true. And we're so quick to try and make ourselves matter when we just do. And it's such a
Mhm.
good point that our interactions, all of that, everything we're doing already is a piece of the legacy we will leave, the interactions that we have
Mhm.
with others, the daily just showing up for ourselves, for other people. It matters so much. And so when we are busy chasing something else, we're missing out on just the beauty of who we are.
Yes, 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 and it's constantly changing too, like, if you had this goal and I'm very much a planner and a goal person, so, I say this as much to myself as anyone else, but if we constantly have a goal that we're trying to meet and we reach that goal and we forget to celebrate it, we forget to go, "Oh my goodness, look how far I've come," and we just go, "Okay, now it's the next goal." We're That's just so exhausting, and we're never gonna be able to fully enjoy the present moment if we're continually chasing the next best thing, whether it be in career, in who we are as a person, whatever it is. And I know, before I was with my husband, I felt a lot that, I had to be, fixed, or I had to be completely healed or whatever to be worth loving because of different abuse that I had dealt with in my past and different exes that did not treat me well. And while I do think that can't always give the love that the other person may deserve if we don't work on healing ourselves, depending on where we're at in our healing journey, depending on what we've been through, but we're not any less worthy of love because of, where we're at in our life. My husband has really helped me heal in so many ways that, he's noticed different things, helped me point stuff out, been there to listen. And I feel like he has helped me grow and heal in so many ways that I wouldn't have had if I didn't take a chance and be like, "Oh, well, I need to work on healing this. I need to, be this perfect version of myself before I get in a relationship." And that is something I think as well that kind of ties into all of that I've been working on and kind of healing my inner child with all of that as
Yeah.
well.
It how many times we need I had a guest not long ago who was talking about breathing belief into people because we are seeing through scars and through pain and through experiences, and our brain has created stories around that to protect and shield us. And sometimes they're not kind, but they do some still serve a protective purpose. But when outsiders can see us without all of that and share that
Mhm.
with us, especially loved ones like a husband, someone close to you, I think it's important that we do surround ourselves with people who can breathe belief into us, see beyond our scars and our self-imposed limitations.
Yes, absolutely.
I love how you say that there's nothing that I can accomplish that would add value to me. So there's no amount that I can't do that would take it away. And that's so important to recognize because then, to your point, when you have goals, because you just want to, it sounds like you're someone that likes to reach for things. It's not to add
Yes.
value to you, it's just because it's something you want to do. And
Yes.
I would argue that that adds more value, not to you because you're infinitely valuable, but in the world is by doing it from that place of not trying to fill a hole that doesn't exist, but just
Yes,
trying to add.
exactly. It adds to my level of joy or my spark or whatever, but it doesn't add to my inherent value or worth. So that is something, like I said, that I've really worked on and has been really beneficial for, there are days where I throw pity parties and like I want to do all these things. And why do I have to, have a body and soul that don't align? It's very frustrating sometimes. But at the same time, even though I have those days, I feel like I'm able to get out of that funk a lot faster than I used to, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, how do you support yourself in those moments when they do show up? I mean, I would say even those of us that don't have those same struggles, I mean, I have pity parties all the time, and we have to give
Yes.
ourselves permission to. I don't know if you
Yes.
believe that they last so much less long when we actually just let ourselves do that and get it out, think of it as a release of sort. But how do you support yourself in those moments?
So I try and, I have different people that I talk to that I, surround myself with. So I sometimes will vent to them. I try and make sure that, I'm listening to podcasts, listening to music. Um, I'm a Christian, so reading my Bible and reading different devotional books. I also just love reading in general. So I'll read like different fiction books, things like that that help fill my cup. Sometimes with my health, I can't really read or I can't really do stuff. So I watch comfort shows or I just, remind myself that it's okay. And like you said, like the more with my health, if I continue to push myself past my boundaries and be like, oh, well, I'm having a, bad flare day, but I'm going to still do all the things that I want to do. I've slowly learned that that's just going to make it worse. And then I'm going to have more days that I can't do things and I'm going to have to reschedule things. So if I try and make sure that, I put things spread out. I have certain things, that I clean monthly. I have certain things that I do weekly, but I try and make sure that I spread it out and have like my Wednesdays generally are a little bit less and my Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays and Fridays are a little bit more. And then Saturdays and Sundays, I try and leave to not really do anything besides like maybe dishes or laundry or something. So that way I can, take care of myself before I have the crash. Because I used to be like, oh, I'm just going to do it all when I feel good. And then I'd have a week where I was just in so much pain and couldn't get out of bed. And that obviously doesn't serve me, doesn't serve anybody. So I've had to just realize that taking care of myself in advance because I know that it's going to come is what works best.
It's so aligned with what you're saying is brilliant and so aligned with what we can do even for those that don't suffer from chronic illnesses. It is this planning to support yourself. It's like putting those parameters in place. Like, I'm going to spread things out so when flare-ups come, it doesn't have to be as big of a disruption. It's like, I've put this into place and then here's my comfort plan or
Mhm.
my tools. It's so aligned and it's so good to hear that there are ways for those of us out there who are struggling, whether it be an illness or a circumstance of caregiving that seems disruptive to what you want to accomplish. You make it into a way that works for you. You learn from the times where you maybe tried to push through and it didn't work so that you don't repeat that and
Yes.
support yourself. It's so beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. And I have different things with my health too. Like I use a TENS unit, I use a massager, I see a chiropractor. I do all these things that I try and like I said, do them before I have the flare to reduce the flare. And sometimes it's unavoidable. Sometimes it happens between weather, by just whatever. Different things affect it in different ways. But I feel like the more that I've learned to listen to my body and realize that I'm doing more of a disservice by not into my body and continuing to push myself than I am by listening to it. It's definitely really helped. And even though I still am like high on the MIDA scale for migraines, basically the migraine disability scale, I definitely am way better than I used to be as far as pain intensity wise for the most part because I've been able to implement those things.
Mm, beautiful. So, what would you, I'm sure our audience is curious now, what would you define as your purpose?
I would say that it's hard because I feel like in different moments it's different depending on my ability to do certain things or whatever. But I feel like a big part of my purpose is just reminding people that they are worth it and they are loved no matter what. And I think that as someone with chronic illness, I like to try and raise awareness for that. Like with my podcast, I have multiple people on that are fellow spoonies with different chronic illnesses and it's been really, really nice to, even if I can't fully relate to their symptoms or their diagnosis, it's really nice to be able to have that conversation and realize that there's so much that we have in common. And then also outside of that, even people that aren't chronically ill, just how much we have in common. Like I've talked to people all over the world, and it has just been so, so fun to realize like the commonalities that we have, no matter what our background is, and just to be able to highlight that and show that with the ministry, having so many people from all backgrounds and different denominations in the church and different walks of life. And just, I guess I want people to know that they matter and that there's so much more in common. Like we have so much more in common than we may realize. And that if we can just focus more on that than our differences, and I don't think it's a bad thing to talk about your differences and have disagreements and be able to learn and grow. And that's one thing that I love being able to do. But I think coming at it from a place of understanding and compassion versus just trying to fight. And I understand, some people, depending on their level of healing, they may feel like the fight is like a protectiveness and, whatever coping mechanism they have. But I think that when you can get past that and realize that, we're all human and we've all, lived through something, and just try and find the commonness in
Mhm.
amongst all of it, because we can learn and grow and expand who we are, if we do that.
Absolutely. And what a beautiful purpose to share that you matter and that you can be heard and seen even in differences. I think that's so important. And I think it's important to share that, like, especially in our world these days, we have enough division and
Mhm.
we need more unity, but unity doesn't mean sameness. It
Yes.
just means coming together with our differences.
Yes. Yes. And common goals. I think sometimes, like, there are so many instances where I've had people in my life or different things that I've seen or movies, whatever, where they have the same common goal, yet they're going at it in totally different ways. And so they're fighting against each other. And it's like, if you guys could just sit and realize that you have a common goal here, you could solve it better together than trying to fight each other on the best way to do it. Because it just divides you when it's so much better to just work together in the end.
Yeah. What's that saying? Do you want to be right or do you want to be happy?
Yes.
Sometimes that's what that fighting is. It's like just arguing for trying to be right. And I would say in many cases, what I've seen is that it's trying to be heard,
Mhm.
for your view, your focus to matter. And sometimes we think that someone else's view or focus, if it's different coming in, is a danger or a risk to that, but it's not. So, yeah.
Exactly. If you truly believe what you believe, one, you should be able to hear other people's opinion and not feel like you have to sway your opinion because they have a different one. But
Mhm.
also, I think that just like I said, having an open mind and realizing that maybe you're right, but maybe they're right too,
Yeah.
versus you're right and they're wrong.
Yes, we have such an either or, this or that mindset often, and
Mhm.
it's part of how we're wired. So it can be a both and. I always
Yes.
encourage that in everything, within your own mind and with interactions and others. If you can always notice yourself moving towards an either or, this or that, black or white, all or nothing, and shift it to what's the and here? What's the both
Yes.
and here?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So if someone who's listening feels disconnected from their current path, what's one step that you may suggest they take to get today to begin reconnecting with either a new or evolving sense of purpose?
I would say for me, I'm very much a list person. So I think for me, I would, make a list of why did I start what I was doing now, whether it be a job or a group or a podcast or whatever. Why did I start it? What were my goals? And then write down some things that you feel like are not lining up with you anymore. And then try and think about, are they not lining up because lost your focus and your thing is shifted into something it's not the original intent, you need to shift what you're doing? Or is it because you've shifted and you've changed and that's okay and maybe you need to pivot? Because, with my podcast, for example, for the current time, I've been putting out episodes weekly and that's been great. But now I've kind of realized that during the summer months, I want to record less. And so, in order to compensate that, even though I do batching, I'm going to start putting out episodes every other week, unless it's like a two-parter or I put a solo episode or whatever. And that doesn't mean that what I was doing before didn't work for me when it did work for me, but I'm now shifting it to work with what I feel like is going to work for me more in the future and make it more long lasting and more sustainable and make it, you know, less likely of a burnout. Because I think sometimes we just need to take a step back and like look at the thing as a whole and not necessarily think that this is a bad job for me. This is, you know, a bad thing for me to be doing, and just realize, you know, like what is serving me through this and what is not. And can I make what this is serve me where I'm at now, or do I need to completely change? Because I think sometimes people give up on things too easily because they're like, this isn't serving me. I just need to leave. I need to quit, and not realize that they can maybe make some changes to make it work for them. Um, or they stay because they're like, well, this was serving me for so long. This is my purpose. This is what I'm doing. And this is, you know, supposed to be my purpose for the rest of my life, when maybe, you know, why would you want to stay miserable if you could maybe find something that worked for you better?
Yeah. And I like to remind people like what you did last week evolved you. So it may not
Mhm,
be the same thing this week. You are
mhm.
starting from a different level set. So, of
Yes,
course,
absolutely.
as you're evolving and growing, what works for you also will evolve and grow if you allow it. But you
Yes.
highlight such an important thing that so many people do. They either throw the baby out with the bathwater. I don't know why that saying exists, but it's relevant there, where they actually like throw the whole thing out just because it's not working instead of looking for, like you said, little tweaks. Maybe it just means recording every other week instead of every week.
Mhm.
Or we get to those points, like you said, where it's like, no, I decided this, so I have to keep doing it, even if it's no longer working for us. And it's absurd. We get to
Yes.
change, we get to evaluate. I think that's what you're really highlighting here. Just evaluate. If something's
Mhm,
disconnected, look at it. Maybe it's not the
mhm.
whole thing that's disconnected. Maybe it's some pieces to it that can be adjusted.
Yeah, and if it's a career, you know, or even like a podcast or whatever it is, maybe it's not that thing. Maybe it's you. Maybe you have been neglecting yourself and neglecting your self-care, neglecting whatever it is that fills your cup and outside of that. And if you did that, then that wouldn't be as stressful for you because you're
Mm,
filling your cup and being able to pour more into what you're wanting to do.
good point. Such a good point. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Is there anything that you would want to leave our listeners with before we close out?
I would just say no matter what, whether you're chronically ill or not, that we all need rest and we all need to be able to just be sometimes. And I know sometimes probably, you know, some of you may be listening and have kids or not really be in a position where you're like, I can't just be, but sometimes maybe it's just 5 minutes where you can go stand out in the sunshine with your coffee, without shoes, stand in the grass and just breathe. And that is something that is so important. And just kind of going along with what I was saying before about, you know, doing the self-care and whatever, so then you can pour into your job or your passion. Like you can't pour from an empty cup. And you know, just make sure that you're filling your cup and make sure that you're taking time for you and remind yourself that you have value in this moment. And if you made a mistake, you are not a mistake. And if you did whatever it is this morning and yelled at your kids or yelled at your husband or spoke unkindly to yourself, even, just remember that you can change it. The day is not over, and just, or the day is over and you can start fresh tomorrow. But either way, don't feel like just because you had a bad moment that that means you have a bad day. You're having a bad day, you're having a bad life or a bad week. I think sometimes it's so easy if the year starts out and we're like, oh, well, January was terrible, so the year's a wash and I hate 2025 or I hate whatever it is. But you don't have to hate the whole week. You don't even have to hate the whole day. You just had a bad moment and you can change it. It just takes a mindset shift. And sometimes it's easier said than done, but you can do it.
Totally. Bad moments don't define us. They actually build us.
Mm.
So we can
Yes,
embrace them when
absolutely.
they happen, learn from them, and continue to move forward. I tell people all the time, we rarely learn anything from perfect moments. Nothing to learn from those.
Yes.
They don't grow us like
Yes,
bad ones.
absolutely.
Yeah. So good. Thank you so much, Abigail. This has been awesome. I appreciate you.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
What will you take away from today's episode? Here are a few highlights that stood out for me. Purpose can evolve, and that doesn't make it less valid. Abigail shares how her shift from camp ministry to leading an online women's community wasn't a detour, but a redirection rooted in real impact. Doing more doesn't make you worth more. Doing less can't subtract from your value. This becomes a healing mantra for anyone stuck in hustle or worthiness loops. Rest is productive too. Abigail opens up about learning to rest without guilt, set sustainable rhythms, and plan ahead with her health in mind, reminding us that support isn't weakness, it's wisdom. You don't have to throw it all away when something no longer fits. Instead of abandoning a path completely, Abigail encourages listeners to evaluate what's not working and tweak with compassion, not judgment. Whether you're navigating chronic illness, burnout, or simply shifting priorities, Abigail's story is a reminder that you don't need to prove your worth through productivity. You're allowed to grow. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to change your mind. And through it all, you're already enough. Until next time, remember, you don't need a new you. You need more trust in the one you already are. Inside every goal is a decision, an action, an evaluation, and an adjustment. Keep building your rhythm with the Self-Trust Solution. Subscribe, leave a review, and explore how we can work together at theselftrustcoach.com. I'll see you in the next episode.